smart try, but here comes that second rook. David, I feel like Magnus, he's feeling it right now. He's sacrificed a pawn overall, but in comes a rook on the 7th rank, 7th heaven, but only for the player with the white pieces.
Yeah, and you have to be so careful here, Firouzja. We see another blue arrow pop up. So rook to f7, the only saving move here for black, the only way to keep the game going. You have to simply curl up into a ball, shut up shop, and try to survive this onslaught. You need to defend your own rook. Again, save the 7th rank, protect it. And I think you need to guard the f6 pawn simultaneously, Robert. Of course, he finds the best move, the only defense, and he forces a trade of rooks. That will come with a sigh of relief. Huge move there found by Firouzja. He's defending well, and he's a pawn up still. So if he survives this onslaught, it's not going to be easy. Then he can look to the future with confidence. I was going to say which way to recapture. He takes back with a rook. And now Magnus, either he has to retreat or he trades off a second pair of rooks. Queen and bishop versus queen and knight. Often favour the queen and knight when they combine, but they're still on the wrong flank, on the wrong side of the board. Who do you feel is playing for a win, Robert?
Well, look at that exclamation point for king out into the open, king h6. The black king would have been all alone in the corner, and this move, bishop d5, would have actually been more harmful had the king been back on h8. So who do I favor here? I favor having a safe king. The white king is not in danger, but perhaps black can bring this queen down, follow it up with a knight to d2, and then maybe the white king isn't so safe after all because it needs to stay attached to this pawn, this lonely little pawn on f2. So I believe that knight d2 should be played here, and in fact, only move for Alireza. And David, before we continue to go to X's and O's, can we just shout out the players for their 99+% accuracy in a position that has been this sharp the whole way through?
Wow, we talked about who would start faster, who would bring their A game. They both have in this final. Early days, and your move on the board. Black is threatening some nasty checks, nasty mating ideas. Queen to f1 check, winning the f2 pawn. White doesn't have time to go on a checkmating odyssey of his own. Bishop to g8 does not work. That's White's idea, but it's too slow. Black delivers mate in 2 with queen to f1 check and knight to f3. So queen a7 now, Magnus's only move. Both sides walking that tightrope. Queen a7 defends the f2 pawn. So I think process of elimination, Magnus has to find it. I was expecting him to react kind of more dramatically there on the camera, Robert, because I think he missed this idea for black. He's lucky that queen a7 clings on. The queen defends the dark squares, the bishop defends the light squares. So black's attack not decisive, but this could still go either way.
And the fact that Magnus has not made his move already, it indicates to me that you're right, that he is fortunate at this point. He went forward, but he's the one with the less safe king. It doesn't seem that way, but there's a black king on h6, and yet there's no check against it. And this knight d2 move and queen a7, another accurate response. I mean, these players are playing extraordinary chess. It's not something that I say lightly. Every single move has been an accurate decision. And this queen on a7 for white, if it can come back to d4, there are threats against this black king. Bishop to g8 is not available. I just want to quickly show that if we can, while we just Alireza's on the clock, that your point is really well taken, David, that a bishop to g8 move would actually lose the game for white right away. So I'm just going to show what happens in the event of the bishop leaving. Queen check, king h2. The white queen does protect f2, but the bishop was needed to protect f3. That is a checkmate. The queen takes care of these squares, and the king is hunted by this knight on f3. So this would be devastation for Carlsen. He is not going to fall into anything like that. But I think, David, your point is super well taken, that Alireza, his king is somehow safer, and it's the white king that always needs tending to from both the queen and the bishop.
That's right, and I think Alireza here, he's working out who a queen exchange might favour. White does have the option at some point of throwing a queen to e3 check-in, and yes, black is a pawn up on the queen side, but if black's pawns don't run, then white's king will journey over. Bishops thrive over knights with pawns on both flanks. The black knight almost trapped actually behind enemy lines if the queens disappear. I think otherwise, Alireza would have already played the most natural move. Queen to e5, centralization for black. Preventing your main idea there, Robert, queen to d4 is probably white's next move if you do nothing. So I like queen e5, hitting the bishop, hitting the pawn on b2. He's just calculating endgames. He's calculating whether this move allows bishop to g8, for example. And in the end, he does play the most instinctive move, but backed up by calculation. The clock's, though, getting dramatic. 1 minute against just under 2 minutes. And what are you predicting here? It feels like a draw still far, far away. Maybe even the least likely result. It's still Robert, so much drama on the board.
These positions always amuse me because the engine says, yeah, take your choice. 7 options, all of them are equal. And then you make a move like bishop g8 without the computer by your side and queen e4 check, and it's the white king that gets in danger. So you look at Magnus, queen c5, the engine, it doesn't budge. The best move, king g7 back, not allowing the queen to deliver a check. So both sides continue to play perfect chess. But I will say that it does feel like black's position is better. You're up a pawn. Suddenly there are threats like a3 trying to take advantage of this one little pawn on b2. It is covering both of black's extra passers on this side. So one pawn takes care of 2 until I throw away a pawn just to spring free a passer. I think I would do it now, David.
Yeah, I think that's a great call, Robert. Magnus does have this mechanism up his sleeve, though. I'm really surprised to see this last move, queen to a5. I thought this was the perfect moment to bail out, to escape with a draw. Queen to a7 check, forcing the black king back to h6, queen back to c5, threatening queen to f8, and we'll see a dance between the white queen and the black king replying to the queen's threats. But Magnus, this last move indicates he's playing for more. But risk is involved if you play for a win in such a wild position, especially with kind of mutually vulnerable kings. And your move on the board, nice call, deflecting that b pawn. And no more b for bodyguard there. The black c pawn, therefore, will be allowed to run through. I think Magnus will be regretting this decision. The b pawn, once it takes on a3, what else simply? You can't take with the queen, you've got to protect your bishop. Then it's just a race, and black is clearly ahead in the pawn race.
And important to note that the knight on d2 can be captured, but that's how you lose games, because black will take back on b2. You could probably even push the pawn to a2, and the bishop on d5 will be loose in the end, while the white queen does everything it can to stop the runaway pass pawn. So less than 30 seconds for white in this game. He does take Alireza. He pretty much pre-moved the pawn to c3. So where is the draw? I see the engine saying it's equal, and I guess, David, it's your plan from earlier. The black king is a bit too out in the open.
Yeah, with such a weak king, it's going to be hard to play for a win. Otherwise, Firouzja could push his c-pawn, but it looks like that's playing with fire. It looks like you're really living life on the edge. I don't actually see the checkmate, I've got to admit, Robert, after pawn to c2, trying to deflect the white queen away from the defense of her bishop. But Alireza, under 20 seconds now, surely he cannot take that risk. The professional approach, the recommended approach, would be to retreat the king, repeat once, and then decide, but he's pushing. He's allowing Magnus to go for mate, and Magnus has blundered.
Oh, and Magnus missed this simple, quiet pawn move. The black king is safe. There's no bishop check because of the knight, and the bishop will be hanging if the queen tries to stop the c-pawn, but he can't even do that because the only square is covered by the black queen. It's completely winning for Firouzja now.
Wow, don't try this at home. The black king is literally living life on the edge, but Magnus can't checkmate it. He's not in time. There's nothing to do. Black makes a new queen. 2 queens are better than 1. This is going to be a win for Alireza. It was a perfect game until this one moment, and Magnus finally reacts, shakes his head. He knows this is gone. One mistake, and
he resigned. Magnus didn't even want to play on. He did not want to